The desert winds whisper truths no satellite could hear. Under the glow of a blood-red moon, Ibrahim Traoré walked silently along a restricted tarmac in the heart of Burkina Faso. A plane, unmarked, matte black, equipped with next-gen stealth tech, awaited him. No logos, no flags. Used a signal. And in Traoré's pocket, a device no world leader had yet laid eyes on, an AI chip engineered to speak the languages of war, diplomacy, and deception. The world had underestimated him. Again, when Ibrahim Traoré first appeared on the global stage, they called him the transitional captain. A placeholder. A military man in a civilian suit. But what they didn't know was that he wasn't just planning to shift power in Burkina Faso, he was about to break the entire geopolitical architecture of the modern world. The real operation had begun months before his first televised address. On hidden servers under Ouagadougou's telecom infrastructure, a hybrid AI, codenamed Indaba, had been trained. Not on datasets of warfare, but on colonial archives. Every negotiation, every betrayal, every stolen resource and sabotaged movement. It knew the playbook of empires. And it was built not to fight wars, but to outthink them. Meanwhile, intelligence officials in Washington received an anomaly report. Chinese and Russian satellites had stopped recording activity in the 12-square-mile zone in West Africa. The data was not missing. It had been overwritten. Edited. Someone had created a visual loop of empty desert, but on the ground, machines moved. Equipment the Pentagon didn't even know existed. Mining tools, built from blueprints found in patent archives, with subtle upgrades. Clean, autonomous, impossible to trace, the CIA launched an operation under the radar, Phantom Dust. But agents sent to investigate never returned. Their comms were rerouted through a Burkinabe relay system built by a company that didn't exist on paper. The last signal? A digital heartbeat that repeated one phrase in Morse code: Africa rewrites the game. And this was just the beginning. Traoré had never been interested in standing in line at international summits, sipping champagne and smiling politely. He saw those rooms for what they were, echo chambers of diluted influence. So instead, he began hosting closed-door sessions in a location not marked on any map, the Red Conference Hall, deep beneath the Sahel Mountains. Attendees were not presidents or ministers, but defected software engineers, dismissed military strategists, rogue AI researchers, and exiled African economists. Together, they worked on what Traoré dubbed sovereign intelligence. Not just national independence, but cognitive independence. No longer would policy be shaped by foreign think tanks and Western algorithms. Traoré would develop Africa's own predictive models, trained not on propaganda, but reality, word spread in the darkest corners of global intelligence circles. A country with fewer than 25 million people had begun intercepting NATO protocols mid-transmission, not to attack, but to correct. An African network was identifying flaws in global security models, and suggesting improvements. Europe was stunned. Washington was furious. China grew intrigued. That's when the deal happened. Under the cover of a sandstorm, representatives from an unnamed Chinese AI conglomerate arrived at a ghost city in northern Mali, once a failed military base, now converted into a quantum research lab. There, Traoré offered something no one else on Earth could provide: access to Project Umbra, a sentient dataset of African resistance movements, counterinsurgency psychology, and anti-colonial pattern recognition. In exchange, China offered access to their black budget AI chips, the kind banned under every global ethics treaty. But it is where Traoré shocked them all. He accepted the chips, then refused to use Chinese cloud infrastructure. "You want me to be your pawn?" he said, staring down the Chinese delegate. "But I already flipped the board." Word of this betrayal triggered panic across Asia. Suddenly, ships rerouted. Supply chains froze. Even Huawei satellites saw blackouts over the Sahel zone. It was clear, Traoré wasn't aligning with anyone. He was building the world's first truly independent AI state. Across the Atlantic, the USA responded with a cyber maneuver disguised as a humanitarian grant. They go? To plant a Trojan chip inside a gifted AI-powered water management system. But once again, Traoré saw it coming. When the chip was activated, instead of launching, it triggered a broadcast, not to African officials, but to every UNE assembly member, a 5-minute footage reel of intercepted USA manipulation attempts in developing nations. Dating back 40 years, the broadcast ended with Traoré's voice, "Come and chilling, we've been studying your game since before you knew we were watching. The age of oversight is over." Souk turned to silence. In less than 6 months, Burkina Faso had become the most encrypted state on earth. Every digital window closed. Every satellite connection monitored by ENAI not even the NSA could predict. World leaders began receiving anonymous diplomatic briefs, perfectly written, psychologically tailored, inviting them to sit at a new table. A table where Traoré would not negotiate for handouts, but for leverage, behind closed doors. Even African leaders grew nervous. Nigeria attempted to lure away Traoré's top coders with offers of all wealth. Ghana offered him a peace prize. Rwanda suggested a joint AI defense treaty. But Traoré refused every deal. His plan was not to unite Africa under existing flags. It was to erase the concept of dependency itself. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, in a secret tweet sent to only 13 people, wrote, "Whoever controls the cognitive frontier, controls the world." And Traoré just jumped 10 years ahead. Even Russia took note. Putin, in a closed-mic Kremlin session, asked, "Can he be turned?" The response, "He doesn't run on loyalty. He runs on legacy." Still, skeptics wondered, how far could one leader go with tech, theory, and mystery? What about infrastructure? Military. That's when the images leaked. Satellite footage showed a new airbase rising in the desert, but the aircraft weren't jets. They were drone ships. Unmanned. Fully autonomous. Capable of deploying defensive EMP shields and launching rapid response medical and cyber aid in minutes. Not bombs, but interventions. This wasn't a military project. It was a sovereignty engine. Then, the Vatican received a document, unsigned, encrypted, theological in tone. It posed a question: if divine authority is truth, and truth is data, should faith not be modeled through machine learning trained on moral failure? Pope Francis reportedly said, "I have never been more curious and more afraid," at the same time. The world had no map for this. By month 7 of Traoré's silent revolution, Forbes listed Burkina Faso as the fastest rising stealth state. Not by GDP, but by strategic unpredictability. Every move calculated. Every alliance, temporary. Every public appearance, scripted for maximum psychological impact. At the UN General Assembly, a seat marked Burkina Faso remained empty. But a hologram appeared, Traoré's face, generated in real time using deepfake tech merged with authentic behavioral patterns. He delivered a 7-minute speech in 12 languages, including Latin and Mandarin. The message was clear: we are no longer the experiment. We are the engineers. The world sat paralyzed, screens flickering, delegates frozen mid-sentence. Traoré had done the unthinkable, not by war, not by wealth, but by narrative domination. He had turned geopolitics into theater, and the world into his audience, but what no one expected, was the U-turn point. 2 weeks after the holographic UN address, Traoré vanished. No public appearances. No digital trace. Burkina Faso's encrypted signals dropped to silence. For 11 days, nothing. Not even AI chatter. Cyberwatch agencies believed a blackout had occurred. Series flooded the net. Was it a coup? A foreign operation? As his own technology turned on him, then, Day 12. Every major international server, from Google to military domains, received a single notification. No malware, no threat. Used to file, labeled, the interview. The footage opened in an abandoned Pan-African library, deep beneath the sands. Traoré sat alone. No guards. No fanfare. Just him, speaking to camera. I left, he said, to see if the machine I built could live without me. And it did. It wasn't boasting. It was testing. For 11 days, Burkina Faso had been running on decentralized intelligence. No leader. No hierarchy. Just a protocol of trust, designed not in code, but in culture. He continued, Africa was never behind. We were observing. And now, we were rewriting the interface. At that moment, global economists saw something terrifying. While attention had been on Traoré's tech, his economic algorithm, the silent side of his empire, had linked rural African trading networks to a blockchain not listed on any global index. It was called Ngoni, a digital ledger built on oral history patterns, tribal consensus mechanisms, and mobile-based village polls. It wasn't built for speculation. It was built for memory, and it had already processed $1.4 trillion in untracked resource exchange within its test zone. The IMF panicked. The World Bank launched emergency talks to invite Traoré to partner for responsible digital transition. But he declined. His only response was a quote from Marcus Garvey, a people without knowledge of their past is like a tree without roots. Traoré wasn't building a country anymore. It was building a time machine. One that looped memory into policy. Data into dignity. Behind the scenes, an elite Silicon Valley task force was created, Project Firewall. Their mission? To stop the spread of Traoré's cognitive tech. Not by hacking it, that was impossible, but by discrediting it. Social media bots began flooding timelines. Traoré is a myth, deepfake dictator, Burkina Faso is AI run. But these lies only amplified curiosity. Even schoolchildren in Brazil and Malaysia began Googling his name. It wasn't a threat. It was a symbol. Meanwhile, in Davos, a quiet emergency vote took place. The question? Whether to allow Traoré to be considered for Global Stabilization AI Ethics Council. A title invented overnight. But before votes were cast, each delegate received a direct message on their private devices. The message wasn't from Traoré. It was from Indaba. His AI. It read, while you vote on whether I belong at your table, eBay already calculated what happens when you don't. And attached. A 3-minute simulation. Of a world, without colonial intervention. With projected GDPs. Real-time satellite visuals. Decolonized timelines. AI statistics. Poverty indexes. All running in parallel. When the simulation ended, 9 out of 12 delegates abstained from voting. The session was closed. No press was informed. Elsewhere, a private Zoom call between the CEOs of Microsoft, Google, and a South Korean AI firm was leaked. One sentence stood out: if this guy merges with quantum infrastructure, it's over. It becomes the oracle. What they didn't know was, he already had. Deep in the Central African Republic, a subterranean lab powered entirely by geothermal energy had gone online. Its name? Haga Nexus. Unregistered. Unmapped. Staffed by rogue developers from 14 countries who designed NDAs written in African proverbs, not legalese. The lab's purpose: train an AI model that could simulate post-trauma diplomacy, how nations wounded by centuries of invasion, genocide, and exploitation could navigate the next 10 years without repeating the past. At the center of this lab sat a sphere, smooth, obsidian, pulsating, nicknamed the drum. It contained no wires, no ports. Only biometric sensors. To access its core, a person had to recite a forgotten language, with perfect intonation. The tech wasn't locked by e-password, it was locked by e-culture. For the first time in history, machines didn't just require code. They required memory, and that's when Elon Musk made the call that in a private jet above Tunisian airspace, Elon met Traoré face to face. No cameras. No translators. No contracts. Only an audio recording remains, leaked by a rogue pilot. Elon asked, "What's your endgame?" Traoré responded, "I'm not playing to win. I'm playing to remember." Elon offered to co-build a space-based memory vault, to store Indaba on Martian servers. Traoré declined. "Africa's data must live where Africa breathes," he said. Meanwhile, South Korea, India, and Brazil quietly joined the circle, a confidential coalition of nations willing to test Traoré's AI governance model at municipal scale. Cities like Bangalore, Sao Paulo, and Busan began seeing reforms appear overnight: traffic systems optimized, waste reduced, community violence down 70%. But none of the tech came from American providers. The US responded with the Civic Integrity Act, banning foreign AI from influencing policy. But journalists discovered the lab's real name was Anti-Indaba Bill. And still, Traoré said nothing, until one final event changed everything. The African Union announced an emergency summit, not in Addis Ababa, but in the digital realm. Delegates entered a virtual space modeled after Timbuktu's ancient libraries. And in its center, stood a tower made of words, literal code formed from historical African manuscripts, scanned and reconstructed into a neural network. Then, a voice echoed, not from speakers, but from within each delegate's mind. Indaba spoke, "This is not a new Africa. It's the one you buried. He just brought it back." As the summit ended, each delegate received a private prophecy, a prediction of their country's future under three choices: obedience, resistance, or participation. Some burned the messages. Others cried. A few simply nodded, and Traoré, he reappeared in public, standing on a plateau above the Sahel. No guards. No mic. Used him, wind howling. He looked into the sky and said, "Let the next empire be an idea, not a flag." The wind across the Sahel carried more than sand. It carried whispers, of a man who no longer ruled a nation, but a narrative that refused to die. Ibrahim Traoré had become something new, not a president, not a general, not a CEO, but an idea virus, infecting not minds, but timelines, in the Western world. It did what it always does when it cannot control a story. It tried to erase it. YouTube demonetized any video using Traoré in titles. International schools were advised to omit recent African events in political science. A UN committee launched a vague investigation into digitally induced political destabilization, citing Burkina pattern interference. But none of it mattered, because a strange anomaly appeared on the world map. Gando, a small village in Burkina Faso, showed up on satellites, pulsing with an electromagnetic signal. Not powered by electricity, scientists were flown in. What they discovered defied logic. The villagers had constructed antennas using baobab bark, kapir, and minerals sourced from a forgotten mine. When activated, these organic trees emitted a signal that resonated at 7.83 Hz, the Earth's natural frequency. But it is the twist: at frequency, when digitized, synced perfectly with Indaba's communication protocol. Translation? The Earth itself had become a router. Traoré wasn't building infrastructure. It was building an ecological internet, each village connected not by satellites, but resonance. The old dream of digital independence was now growing from the soil, and just when people thought he had peaked, he vanished again, not in silence, but in ceremony. Witnesses say he walked barefoot into a dormant volcano in Eritrea, accompanied by tribal elders and linguists. Cameras captured nothing. Only one recording surfaced, a flute playing in a language no one could translate. 3 days later, a black rain fell over 4 countries, scientifically explained as volcanic ash mixed with rare earth dust, but beneath microscopes, the droplets contained microcrystals, shaped like ancient tribal sigils, and embedded inside, code, not computer code, linguistic code. Every droplet carried one phrase, in a different endangered African language. When stitched together, linguists found a sentence: "We are the seeds of those you forgot. And we remember." The world cracked, governments froze budgets to investigate Traoré. Religious leaders called him a false prophet. Billionaires tried to buy his followers. But followers couldn't be bought. Because they didn't follow him. They remembered him. In Argentina, murals of Traoré appeared overnight. In rural Japan, a monk tattooed his quote along his spine. In the Bronx, school kids renamed their classroom room Indaba. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a language update to the species. Then came the event that changed everything, the universal power down. On August 4th, precisely 11:11 de la mañana. GMT, every internet-connected device globally flashed white for 7 seconds, then black, then restored. No data was lost. But something had changed. Each device, regardless of OS, had a new folder, Traoré Archive, inside it. One video. 1 minute long. A child's voice says, "We asked the earth what it remembers, and it showed us faces, names, trees, water, pain, and then it said, 'Now you lead.'" Then silence. No malware. No threat, just memory. That's when it hit people. Traoré hadn't just built a system, it seeded a planetary memory protocol. The only way to erase him was to erase history itself. Meanwhile, African universities, long underfunded, began receiving anonymous donations in cryptocurrency. Within weeks, they were fully digitized. Professors returned. Labs rebuilt. And yet, no one claimed credit. Some say it was Traoré's final order, others say it was Indaba acting on its own, but then, a final mystery emerged. An ancient manuscript was discovered in a Malayan tomb. Predicted by one of Indaba's earliest text simulations. Inside was a single drawing, a man in red beret, standing before a tree that bore code instead of fruit. The drawing was dated 1312 AD, archaeologists gasped. Historians dismissed it, but the people, they nodded, because they knew, Ibrahim Traoré wasn't a glitch in time. It was a return. One day, they'll say he never existed. That he was myth, defied, propaganda. That Burkina Faso never became a digital sanctuary. That memory can't code. That culture isn't the intelligence. But we know better. Because in every system, there is a line of code they can't trace. And that line spells his name.